said, it is a great day, and that we made the choice to come out today and come together and learn a little bit more, celebrate a little bit, you know, have a little conversation. It's all good, right?
It's all good.
Oh, it's more than all good. Okay, as we get started today, let's stop, we'll pause and reflect on the fact that there is one power, one presence in the universe that is available to each and every one of us as we open ourselves up, as we open our hearts, we open our minds, and we open our belief, faith in that oneness, that it is here, not just here in place, but here within us, and it expresses as us and expressing through us. As we go forth into today, we plan on learning a little bit more, having a little bit more to put into practice in our day-to-day life experience, demonstrating life and living this at an ever higher, more abundant and prosperous way that we can share within ourselves, share within our community, within our family, and create a better world. I'm grateful and thankful that we're here today. I'm grateful and thankful for what we have to learn. I'm grateful and thankful for all of us that have joined us today, and we release this to God in thanksgiving, and so it is.
Yes, so it is.
So we're in chapter 4 of the introduction, in the Science of Mind, second half, and well, second part. And I say second half because it was my intention to actually go through this in 2 parts. But I found as I was working on the show last Thursday that by the time I gave the time I wanted to give to that part that we would be covering today, that there was still more of the chapter left. So we're going to make this part 2 of 3 more than likely. We'll see how this plays out, okay?
Fine.
Any questions before we get started from last week?
No.
Okay. In the textbook on the bottom of page 55, and I kind of went up to this point last week, but we're going to start here. Holmes writes, he says, a time will come when we will let our conversations be in heaven and refuse to talk about, read, or think about those things that ought not be. Now, we can look at this and, say that when Holmes is talking about that conversation will be in heaven, that it's in some far off place, but that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about having that conversation within us, within ourselves, and that we'll seek to see the day that our conversations will all be within ourselves, and that we're talking about our spiritual conversations, because where we make that connection with divine principle, with God, is not by talking to someone else and having them make the connection for us, or praying to something that's out there, but rather quieting our mind, going within and seeking to see that light that's there, the guidance that's there, the love that's there, and allow that to demonstrate and manifest in our life. Problem is, for so many of us right now, when we pause and we stop and we reflect, a lot of the chatter that's going on within our minds, within our consciousness, has to do with chaos and struggle, or the various things that we deal with on a day-to-day life experience and expression. And oftentimes, given what we see on the evening news, or the morning news, or the midday news, or the news that we get at work or from friends and family, there's just a lot of chaos and stuff going on. We can't go out into the world and tell the world how to behave, but we can go within ourselves and seek to see the divine principle that's there. And as we do that on a regular basis, as we do that continuously within ourselves, it's kind of like a skill. We strengthen that skill within ourselves, our ability to make that connection, our ability to listen to and understand and see the expression of guidance that God gives us in our day-to-day life experience. And as we do that, then we'll see heaven begin to express in our life, our good, or love, whatever you want to call it. And this is what Holmes was talking about when he said that we'll talk about or read about and refuse to talk about or read about those things that ought not be. And that's the stuff, and there's a lot of people who get wrapped up in the stuff. Yes. We're going to give that up if we haven't given it up already. And if we're in that process, then we're on our way. We're partially down the road on our journey. And every journey, as we go through this, Our spiritual journey is not a singular journey. Our spiritual journey is made up of many small journeys as we go through our expression. Journeys on learning how to do treatment, put treatment into practice in our life. Journeys how to think right. Journeys how to see our neighbors and love them regardless of who or what they are that the physical world tells us, but know the truth for them, that they are in fact a part of the divine principle expressing as them. Maybe we have to put up boundaries. Maybe we have to put space between us, but that which we put space between and boundaries between are still that which we love. We just, they're just not where we're at in our journey. We're not going to subject ourselves to people that want to be unhappy and perpetuate unhappiness in whatever form that is. So we do that. So as we move forward, he says, of all the people in the world, the ones that have come the nearest to touching the seamless garment of truth have been the most sympathetic and the greatest lovers of the race. Jesus said, and if I be lifted up, not dragged down, I will draw all men unto me. And that's from John 12:32. And it goes on, it says, we are in the world and of it, and it is good that it is so. The world is all right when we view it correctly. When he says the world is all right when we view it correctly, I think that was when we view it correctly, we say, well, wait a second, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. I was just talking about it. But the world is all right when we view it correctly. Right. Because we create that love, we create that consciousness, we create that rightness within ourselves, and the world will mirror it back to us. So, he says the world is all right when we view it correctly. He says, who knows what would transpire if all men and women would speak the truth. He says, it has never yet been tried, but let not the mouth of the profane hinder those who would enter, thereby keeping them for those who would utter the profane, and thereby keeping them from entering. The world has never yet followed this simple ethic of Jesus, yet it is loud in its proclamation that it is Christian. And he goes on to clarify this. He says, this statement is not written in a spirit of controversy. It is one of conviction, and will make its appeal only to those who are convinced. And then he goes on to say, a man convinced against his will remains unconvinced still. There has been, throughout a long period of time, a declaration of we are loving people, and yet we don't express ourselves as loving people. And this is what Holmes is talking about. The time has come to look at not what has been taught about Jesus, but look at what Jesus himself taught. And when we look at what Jesus taught, we understand that he's not talking about some particular dogma or theology that a particular group has a hold or a handle on or any other ownership. And he's talking about what all of humanity has an ownership of as an individual part. We are expressions of God as us in our day-to-day life experience 24/7 because there's only one. There's only one. And when we understand there's only one, and then we begin to take that understanding, he says, we need to get understanding. And when we get that there is just this one, and I'm repeating this, there's one and there's only one. There can be no division. But we set up division in ourselves and our life in many different ways that we don't even think about. We've talked about like judgment and prejudice. We talked about, all sorts of things. But just the mere fact that we tend to look at something as different, when we look at whether it be a different country, a different city, a different town, people from the South are different than people from the North, and Californians are different than New Yorkers and stuff. And that's one thing to understand it just kind of as a light description, but we've got to go deeper than that because it's these subtleties that when we allow them to predominate in our mind, that they keep us either separate or seeing separateness. And either way, that separateness has to do with God. when we go into this concept of affirmative prayer treatment, this is where this is one of the great things in New Thought and religious science, science of mind and spirit, is this concept of affirmative prayer treatment. We're going to get into this today because this is where not only through meditation, but active prayer treatment that we actually can consciously begin to demonstrate in our life those things that we want to see in our life demonstrated. Those things which heretofore maybe have been in our wish list, but have not been in our manifestation list. And we want to see things manifested. We don't want that wish list. Wish list is fine, but a wish list does not provide anything other than something to hang on the refrigerator and look at once in a while. We want to see demonstration in our life. We want to see God manifest in our life. We want to see good in our life. We want to see health in our life. We want to see love in our life. We want to see unity and coming together in our life. And it's through the power and this process of what we call affirmative prayer treatment that we can take an active role in seeing that happen and made manifest. Peter, if you'll give us a song, please.
I was reading a book about, when the Jews were rounded up, and put on the freight trains and packed in like animals, and while they were traveling, what the writers described, he said they shifted from one train to another and were shuffled off, and while they were being shifted, he looked in and he saw these high-ranking German officers in a special coach that was luxurious, and they were drinking wine and eating a sumptuous meal. And he said it looked like heaven. I was taking a shower the other day, and I was thinking about how these people shivering outside in the cold and stuff, who don't have the luxury, haven't had a warm bath or a shower for like 6 months, They're looking at me and I'm in heaven. And then I started to be conscious of that moment instead of being in the shower thinking about what am I going to play tonight and what am I going to do and what sort of guitar am I going to buy. I just became conscious of how good it felt. And I realized I was in heaven, and all we have to do is just realize from another perspective that we are.
Oh, yeah.
So, without further ado, when I find heaven in this world, flag of truth will be unfurled. There'll be nothing to fear, nothing to hide. The universal spirit will be on my side when I find heaven in my world. Dear God, watch over my soul. Don't let the darkness take control. In a world of fear and pain, let my spirit rise again. Many rough seas I have sailed, many times in life I failed, but I'll be following that light that guides me safely through the night. And I will start each day anew and do whatever I must do. With all the toil and all the strife, I'll still be grateful.
In this next part that I'm going to read, it's the treatment that Holmes puts in the beginning chapters. But before I do this, I want to clarify a couple things. Sometimes people think, because we talk about the first part of treatment as being the meditative part. Oftentimes people think that, when we speak of treatment, we're talking about a meditation. And we're really not. Not in the sense of like a mindfulness type of meditation. Now, mindfulness meditation is very important. I believe that we should all spend time doing that on a regular basis because it helps focus the mind. But when we begin to talk about treatment, we're talking about something that's active, something that you want to have your mind alert, conscious, and to be a participant in not a way where we're just kind of sitting there and, you know, seeking to find that inner calmness. Treatment is more active, okay? Another thing I want to clarify is not all treatment has to be a formalized treatment. Oftentimes I've spoken of before you awake, get your eyes open in the morning, that you pause for a minute and you give thanks for the day. You declare that the day is a gift given to you, that this is the day that you're going to experience all the gifts that God has for you in this day, and you're going to experience it in a way of gratitude. That's a form of treatment also. As I read this is a great treatment. When I was first learning science of mind and spirit, I really focused on this, and I really appreciate it. And yet, it doesn't fit the formalized 5 steps in the sequence, but it covers everything that we talk about when we talk about the 5 steps. Now, the 5 steps makes it easy for someone that's not familiar with it, that's learning, that's beginning to practice this, but it's not to be a limiting factor. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to read this treatment that Ernest Holmes wrote. And he says here, I am a sinner in the divine mind, a point of God-conscious life, truth and action. My affairs are divinely guided and guarded into right action, into correct results. Everything I do, say, or think is stimulated by the truth. There is a power in this word that I speak because it is of the truth and it is the truth. There is perfect and continuous right action in my life and my affairs. All belief in wrong action is dispelled and made negative. Right action alone has power, and right action is power, and power is God, the living Spirit Almighty. This Spirit animates everything that I do, say, or think. Ideas come to me daily, and these ideas are divine ideas. They direct me and they sustain me without effort. I am continuously directed. I am compelled to do the right thing at the right time, to say the right thing, the right word at the right time, to follow the right course at all times. All suggestion of age, poverty, limitation, or unhappiness is uprooted from my mind and cannot gain entrance into my thought. I am happy, well, and filled with perfect life. I live in the spirit of truth, and I am conscious that the spirit of truth lives in me. My word is the law unto its own manifestation, and will bring to me or cause me to be brought to its fulfillment. There is no unbelief, no doubt, no uncertainty. I know, and I know that I know. Let every thought of doubt vanish from my mind, that I may know the truth, and the truth may make me free.
Yeah.
And so it is.
So it is.
Within that
Beautiful.
treatment that Dr. Holmes wrote, it kind of covers all bases, if you
Yes,
will.
it does.
You know, and it does so in a great way. Now, one of the things about treatment that you want to, as you grow in your spiritual path and you're working on this, is you want your treatments to be spontaneous. It's not to be something that just like now, I read this, although in the early part of your spiritual journey, if you've not had any experience, having something to read to begin with, to stimulate the mind is a very powerful thing to do, and I highly encourage it. But you're going to get to a point where when you pause and you go into treatment, you recognize the divine principle, that which we call God. We recognize our relationship to it. We make our declaration. We share within ourselves our gratitude to God and to ourselves, and then we release this to God, and that covers the 5 steps. So let's take a look now at how Holmes constructed this treatment that he included here. He says, I am a center in divine mind, a point of God-conscious life, truth, and action. My affairs are divinely guided and guarded into right action, into correct results. Right off the bat, he starts with God, right? He says, I am a center of divine mind. Why is it important that we understand that we are the center of divine mind? And if I'm the center of divine mind, what does that make you? Well, what it makes you is also the center of divine mind, because the center in the infinite is to be found everywhere. There's no bias in it. I am a sinner, you are a sinner, you are a sinner. Center with a T.
Yes.
You get that? Okay, yeah. We are the center of God conscious life. God exists as us and exists through us. It surrounds us and it expresses all that we do. Now, oftentimes we get a little confused because sometimes what God expresses for us is not necessarily the thing that we say that we want expressed for us, but in truth, God is expressing exactly as our consciousness and our beliefs have allowed God to express through us. And I say allowed because our minds become the filter. God gives the gift in its entirety, 24/7. We've talked in the past about, if you go out with a thimble, all you're going to get is a thimble full of the good that God gives. The only reason why you have a thimble is because your own mind has limited you. That limitation comes, this is why it's important we understand, that limitation comes not only from the beliefs that we hold consciously, but the beliefs that we hold on a subjective level within our mind. Those things that can affect us. And those things which limit us, we talked about a little bit ago, that those things that hold us in a sense of separateness. That, when we hold ourselves out as being different in any way, okay, when we tie ourselves to the physical materiality, we also separate ourselves out from God. It makes no difference who or what we are, what kind of limitations that we may think we have. Because in mind, when we go to God, whatever may be our limiting thing, whether it be an old belief, whether it be a physical deformity or whatever, there is something that God has for us that will transcend what we believe to be our limitation and allow us to express our life and to express it more abundantly. We're here to do exactly that. And it makes no difference what we believe limits us once we begin to realize that our belief is the limiting factor, not God, not who we are, that we can begin to move beyond where we're at and the things that have held us in bondage. So when Holmes says here, he says, I am the center of God conscious life, truth, and action. My affairs are divinely guided and guarded into right action and into correct results. We make that declaration, and that's what that part of that first, sentence or two that I read. It's a declaration. It's not a pleading. It's not a, gee, God, I really need it. It's, I am divinely guided and guarded, okay, into right action. What is right action? Right action are those things, thoughts, and actions that align us with divine principle, that make us a part within ourselves as a realization of that greater oneness and greater whole, okay? He says here, everything I do or think is stimulated by the truth, and the truth is with a capital T. The truth is the same as what Judge Torr called the absolute. The absolute is the spiritual reality of the perfection of the divine creator. The relative, which is the other part of that equation, is how we see and understand the physical materiality. And how we see and understand it, for most of us, for a good part of our lives, has been through our five senses. What we see, taste, touch, smell, you know that whole thing, right? The only thing is that whole thing doesn't tell us the truth. And we've talked about that. If you look down railroad tracks, you see them come together. Well, they don't come together, but that's what your eyes tell you. Now, the thing is, you know that they don't come together because you learn to know that they don't come together. You just didn't get up one day and go, oh, I see that. You had to learn that. But up until that time, you may have believed that they really did. There's an interesting story. I believe it was a South American tribe, and it wasn't in too long. It was a relatively recent past. They had no interaction with humanity, and they're still occasionally discovering some tribes down there in the jungles that have not had any contact with modern world, right? This one particular tribe had lived in the depths of the jungle, or it existed there, and had no understanding of wide open spaces. Everything, the jungles get a little congested, you got trees and all sorts of stuff, right? Well, they brought them out to a place, some of the tribe members, they brought them out to a place where there was a big open field. And in this open field, at the far end of the field, there was trucks and jeeps or whatever that, took these explorers in and through the jungle, right? But they're way far away. Now, what happens when we see something way far away?
It's small.
It gets small. And these tribes people, they couldn't understand how men could be so small. They look out there and they saw them, they're small. It's because they don't have anything to judge that against, okay? And their beliefs, their senses told them that they're small. There's another story that goes something like when Columbus discovered the New World, that the initial Indians that he came into contact with, they couldn't see how he got there because they had no concept of ships, or anything like that. And it wasn't until some of the tribal leaders were taken out in little boats out, they got close enough that they could all of a sudden hear these things that they hadn't seen, okay? Our senses tie us to the physical world and will hold us in bondage to the physical world if that's all we will allow ourselves to judge the world by. And there's that word, judge, boy, it comes in and it gets us on a regular basis. So, as we move forward, we realize that there's something greater. Beginning of our spiritual journey, we start doing treatment, and in the treatment we make these declarations, right? And so he says here again, I'm going to go through this. He says, there is a power in this word that I speak because it is of the truth being far beyond what our physical senses can tell us. Okay? There is perfect and continuous right action in my life and my affairs. We're making that declaration again as we speak our word. Remember, we've talked recently about the law. When we speak our word, the law responds. And it's the law of cause and effect, right? The law of right action. So when we say there's truth, let me get this right. There's power in the word that I speak because it is of the truth and it is the truth. We're declaring that power. And that power, again, is the power of God. It's that spiritual power that demonstrates in our life when we recognize, realize, and accept it, and it works at the level that we do accept it. Peter, you want to give us our next slide?
Imagining the sunlight as it sparkles in your eyes, I can feel your warmth under winter's cloudy skies. I can feel the breeze as it whispers in my ears, bringing me such comfort, I relinquish all my fear. God is in me, God is in you, God is in me, God is in you, God is everywhere. I won't let the sadness infiltrate my heart. Negativity can't tear my world apart. I have seen the glory nature has bestowed as I wander down this long and winding road. God is in me, God is in you, God is in me, God is in you, God is everywhere. There are still majestic mountains I will never climb, deep poetic lines I will never rhyme, but I will let my spirit rise up in the sky, even though there may be tears I have to cry. God is in me, God is in you, God is in me, God is in you, God is everywhere. God is in me, God is in you, God is in me, God is in you, God is everywhere.
talking about the truth, we're talking about the divine. Oftentimes, you know, particularly when you're dealing with things of a spiritual nature and someone says, well, I know the truth, then everybody else is not part of that group, organization, or whatever, all of a sudden gets a little bit perturbed because they know the truth and their truth is maybe different than your truth. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, once we break it down, there's one absolute truth. And I'm the only one that knows it. No. There's no one can claim to have a corner on or a handle of what is truth. We all can come to it at a certain level. We all come to it at a certain understanding. But the truth is the absolute. And at one point in time, somewhere down the line, I'm sure all of God's expression will have a full understanding of what that is to the point that they can understand it. You know, God's infinite. The truth is infinite. Yes. How do you cage the truth and define it within certain parameters when it's infinite? You can't do that. Mm-hmm. You know, the truth is the truth. What we can do is understand that part that we can understand. And that part is that there is a power and presence for good in the universe that's available to each and every one of us. There is that in the universe which has created all that is out of itself, and therefore we're some expression of that. And because we're some expression of that, because we are in the image and the likeness and the nature of the divine, we have available to us that which is the divine as it exists within us at our level, on the small side, if you will. Okay? How do you get the small side of infinite anyway? I mean, if the infinite's infinite, the small side of infinite is maybe just a little bit infinitely smaller, right? I mean, but you understand what I'm saying, right? It's important that we understand that we're not a separate from. I used to like to play with the word apart. You know, we're not apart from God. We are a part of God, you know? And it just depends on where you put that break in there, which is not a bad way of looking at things, because all that is just a little bit of space. With a little bit of space, all of a sudden we're separate from God. If we remove that space, all of a sudden we are a part of God, or God is a part of us. And you can use that kind of as a metric as you go through your day-to-day life experience. Am I a part of or apart from? Okay, where do we put that space? So he goes through here and he says here, there's a power in this word I speak because it is of the truth and it is the truth. Okay, and one thing before I leave that sentence is I want to clarify when we say there is a power, and that power is not our willpower, that power is not something that I put in it, but that power is God expressing through me. It's the law of responding. Because what's known in God at any one place is known in God in all places, in the infinite, right? And we're declaring our word. And if we're in alignment with principle in our inner spiritual walk, in our inner mind, in our inner beingness, then as we speak our word, the law responds, and it responds at that level. If we're hooked up with love, the law responds to love. If we're hooked up with maybe not so much love, then maybe not so much response. It responds to us at those levels. Okay, so we move forward. He says, there is perfect, continuous right action in my life and my affairs. Now, for most of us, that's still a declaration in our treatment. But as we declare it, we see more of it demonstrated and manifested in our life. You know, if I'm stumbling along, if I'm struggling with issues, maybe addictions or whatever else, and I make that declaration that there's perfect right action in my life, well, someone would look at me and say, that's not, you know. But see, they're tied to the five senses. As long as they're tied to that five senses, they don't see what I can see. What I can see is there's a spiritual perfection that is, in fact, me and everybody else. And in that spiritual perfection, there is right action, there is goodness, there is power, and it is all available to me. And as I declare it, that filter that I talked about opens up a little bit wider. I can accept a little more, I can see a little more, I can demonstrate a little more. And as I get a little bit more there, I can move on to get a little bit more and a little bit more. And maybe that little bit more takes me a long time to get to, but as long as I don't give up, I'm going to get there. Because what do I do as I continue to move on in confidence, in belief, I build my faith. And belief and faith are very interesting things. They're not exactly the same thing. But if you grow your belief, you'll grow your faith in that belief. If you grow your faith, you'll grow your belief. So it's kind of a back and forth. Things that we do, like treatment, for example, they help grow our faith, because as we speak our word and we see demonstration, we go, hey, that worked. Our faith grows. Okay, as our faith grows, what we're working to secure our belief in at an ever higher level, because it's done unto us as we believe, our beliefs grow. You know, and how does this happen? It doesn't happen from somebody else. It happens from us taking the time, making the time, and putting in the effort each and every day. Okay, so we move forward. He says, all belief in wrong action is dispelled and made negative. I'm at that space. I've been dealing with struggles in my life, but today I declare all belief in wrong action is gone. Okay? Now, maybe I don't get up tomorrow morning and everything's going to be hunky-dory, but tomorrow morning when I get up, again, before I open my eyes in the morning, I'm going to thank God for the gift of the day. I'm going to declare this day is good, as a gift of God, and I move forward. And as I move forward again, in small steps, we move up that ladder. Okay? We move forward. So it says here, right action alone has power, and right action is power, and power is God. And that's pretty much self-explanatory. Right action is action that's in alignment with principle. Principle is God. So, you kind of get an idea how that goes. You see, what he's doing is, in this demonstration that he's written out for people with treatment, he's kind of covering all the different bases, particularly for somebody that's new to religious science. Okay, so we read it for a while because we're learning. But as we read it, we begin to, maybe fill in add a little, give a little bit more. Maybe as we talk about right action, maybe it's right action with my family. Maybe it's right action with my boss or work, or, with my finances or whatever. We can begin to spontaneously add a little bit more. We add a little bit more. We're touching our inner self, our inner beingness, and we're moving forward. He says, this Spirit animates everything that I do, say, or think. Ideas come to me daily, and these ideas are divine ideas. We're moving along in our declaration of our connectedness with Source, with our oneness, and how what we put out comes back to us. As we make a declaration that we are connected with God, we are part of God, that we are God expressing as us, as we make those statements each and every day, our realization becomes even more and greater than what it was. And God expresses as us, through us, at higher levels, because we're growing our belief in our faith. So we move on. He says, ideas come to me daily, and these ideas are divine ideas. They direct me and sustain me without effort. It's not about willpower. It's not about determination. Yes, commitment is important. Commitment to taking the time. But it's through our commitment, not our willpower, not our forcing ourselves into something, but through our commitment to our spiritual walk, our spiritual life, that we make that day-to-day connection, okay? And we grow that skill of connecting with God within ourselves. And it really is a skill that we can learn. It's a skill that's available to each and every person as they walk the face of the earth. But just like any other thing is a skill, if we don't take the time to practice it, put it into practice, we don't see the results in our life. So, the Spirit animates everything I do, say, and think. Ideas come to me daily, and these ideas are divine ideas. They direct me and sustain me without effort. I am continuously directed. I am compelled to do the right thing at the right time. Boy, I wished I'd have known that a long time ago in my life. That I was compelled to do the right thing at the right time. Yeah. How I would have liked to have had that demonstrated in my life. And I don't know about you, but it would have been great for me. They direct me and sustain me without effort. I am continuously directed. I am compelled to do the right thing at the right time, to say the right word at the right time, to follow the right course at all times. Boy, think about it. Mm-hmm. Saying the right word at the right time. How many times have we said just that kind of wrong word at the right time, and what does it cost us? Mm-hmm. Many different things, because we weren't connected. We weren't aware of our connected. Mm-hmm. We weren't guided. We didn't spend time making that connection, reinforcing that connection. And once we do, it's amazing how in those situations in the past where we may have put our foot in our mouth, so to speak, all of a sudden these golden words come forth. And once we've said them, we go, well, where did that come from? I don't, for me, it came from me. No, it really didn't. It came from God. And ultimately, as we learn to do our affirmative prayer, we realize that that's how this is going to unfold within us. Those words are going to show up, they're going to appear. Because as we say our word, it should be something that is spontaneous, that comes from within, that we speak it out. Now, when we speak it, are we really having to speak it out loud and talk to a God out there? No. But I will tell you that as you do, if you do speak it loud, you reinforce it back into yourself. But it's not necessary. You know, you happen to be in a car full of people that are not necessarily New Thought religious science people, and you know they're going down the mountain road at 150 miles an hour, and you're doing your treatment, right? But you don't have to do it out loud. You know, I am divinely guided and guarded and protected. Oh, God, get me through this day, right? No, you know what I mean. So he says, I'm compelled to do the right thing at the right time, to say the right word the right time, to follow the right course at all times. All suggestion of age, poverty, limitation, or unhappiness is uprooted from my mind and cannot gain entrance into my thought. In other words, we're making that declaration. And you know how we've talked about in the past where we have beliefs that we've held that we may not even be aware of. And you know, it makes great work for psychologists and counselors. You can go there and spend years and a lot of money trying to delve down and get to those ideas, right? But you can also just treat in a general way. And this is a great way of doing it. I am compelled to do the right thing at the right time, say the right words at the right time, follow the right course at all times. All suggestion of age, poverty, limitation, or unhappiness is uprooted from my mind and cannot gain entrance into my thought. And I can declare that as being so. And yeah, maybe I'm still dealing with some things, but each day as I make that declaration in my life, my day gets a little bit better. The sun shines a little bit brighter. God, my ability to interpret God or allow God to work through me gets a little stronger. And it does that because we make that declaration. We don't have to give ourselves up to anything else, but we do have to work live our life subject to conditions. When this happens, I'm going to be happy. When this happens, I'm going to be fulfilled. That's a conditional life. We got to switch that around. And that's what this is about. That's what treatment's about. It's, I am this way, and this will happen. Not when I hope I'm this way, when I am this way. When I am abundant in heart, mind, and beingness, then I'm abundant in my physical life expression. And what's interesting about that is we all define abundance a little bit differently. For some of us, that may be financial. For some of us, it may be the ability to express themselves in some kind of artistic way. You know, there's a lot of great artists in the world that are no longer with us, but their art is incredible. And today, if you were to buy it, it would cost you a small fortune. But when they did it, it sold for pennies or a meal or not at all. Okay? They didn't do it because it was going to make them wealthy. They did it because there was that within them that needed to express itself. And expressed itself as music, art, literature, or whatever. It's amazing how that happens. But when we connect with our stuff, because we each have our own stuff inside that God has given us as a gift to express in life, and it's different for each of us, just as our DNA is. But when we connect with it and we begin to demonstrate it in our life, we manifest it in our life, all of a sudden the level of our livingness goes up. And livingness is important, more so than anything else, because our purpose here is to live, and to live at ever higher levels of livingness. Because as we live at higher levels of livingness, God expresses itself at higher levels, but God also experiences itself at higher levels. You know, it's kind of a back and forth. God wants us to experience at higher levels, if you will. But God cannot create us to automatically be moving at that level, because then you're nothing more than a robot. There's no feedback. There's nothing. One of the things I heard explained in this way is that love, which we define God as love, right? Love cannot make something mechanically that will be love. It will always just be a mechanical thing. In order for God to experience love as coming back to it, he had to create, she had to create something, a beingness that could turn its back on love and not express love. Because then, when it expressed love, then it came from the heart, so to speak. Then it came from consciousness. Okay? And so, you know, as we see that that's kind of our role, that we express love back to God. Not only in saying we express love back to God, but we express love back to God by taking the gift of life and the opportunity and all that God has prepared for us as individuals, and making use of it in our life with our tools, with our special, you know, we all have certain things that are special to us. Talents, we call them, you know. And there are some people that are talented in writing. There's some people that are talented in music. Some people that are talented in keeping their mouth closed. But no, there's, you know, we learn and we grow. And as we do that, we're serving our purpose here. As we serve our purpose here, we feel fulfilled, we grow, we experience life better, but we also create a better life for all those around us. And for today, that's the end of this part of the treatment thing. I'm going to wrap this up today, and we'll finish off this chapter next week, which will run through 56 to 60, and we'll get it all done. How to use it. What a concept. 1938, Ernest Holmes was talking about how to use God. It almost sounds like, you know, well, it doesn't sound like it was very well accepted at the time. But it was. People began to open up to that idea. I was talking to my daughter earlier today. You know, what we teach in religious science at one time was wildly popular, if you will. I'm going to bring next week, I've been meaning to do it now. I pulled the book out, I'll bring it next week, with some of the figures of how many people at various times in the 20th century that were part of the New Thought movement. It's staggering. Not so much today, partly because people have accepted a lot, we'll say it a lot of it has gotten into secular belief and philosophy, but a lot of it is that people turn their backs on the spiritualists because they were so tied up and tied into the physical world. When we refocus ourselves, we connect with spirit, and we change the world, that's true. The world is really ready for some change now. And we have available to us that which can do just that. And you know, the thing is, and I talk about this on a regular basis, it's not just that everybody's got to become a New Thought practitioner, but the people that are New Thought practitioners, as they change the world, as they teach people by not necessarily teaching them in a formal way, but through just their life expression, through their light shining brighter, as they teach people this consciousness of love, this consciousness of a greater reality, people will change, regardless of what they believe or don't believe. And as they do, the world changes. And on that note, I'll say, and so it is for today. Thank you.
So it is. So it is. So it is. Thank you, Peter.
This is a song about finding love.
Yeah,
Could be romantic love, or could be the love of God, or
go for it.
there were bells on the hill, but I never heard them ringing.
Thank you.
No, I never heard them at all till they were
Thank you. Thank you.
There were birds in the sky, but I never saw them winging. No, I never saw them at all till they were here. Then there was music and wonderful roses. They tell me in sweet, fragrant meadows of dawn and dew. There was love all around, but I never heard it singing. No, I never heard it at all till there was you.
So as we close out our celebration today and we open our hearts and minds into the coming days of the week, we know that we are part of the divine plan, divine principle, divine presence in this life. So we go forth this week, we seek to see greater good, greater love, greater happiness, and greater life in the world around us. And as we seek to see it, we will find it. And as we find it, we can claim that as a demonstration in our life experience. We are all individualized aspects of the greater good that we call God, and we are all expressing life here today in a very good and spiritual way. At whatever that is, it's good and spiritual for the level that we're at. And I know this week that God shines on each and every one of us, shines through us, that we are prospered, we are guided, we are healed, we are loved, and we are connected and cared for. And I'm thankful and grateful for that. And as we do that, we know that for ourselves. We can know that for our family, friends, other spiritual places in this community, in our city, in the surrounding area. And we claim that today as truth. We give this up to God. So it is.
So it is. So it is.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.